in your head or your soul because they don't believe there is a soul.
Le successeur de Watson, le psychologue B.F. Skinner de Harvard, pensait que le comportement pouvait être manipulé pour atteindre le but recherché par le psychologue behavioriste.
Skinner developed what's called operant conditioning, where he was able to demonstrate you can change animal behavior by certain schedules of reinforcement, by giving them rewards at certain times, and then you can teach pigeons to play ping pong, for example, and you can teach rats to run mazes, and you can teach human beings to seek certain economic or societal rewards.
Skinner could actually shape new behavior patterns, and this actually was the sort of thing he quite soon became very famous for.
Son expérience la plus notoire a sans doute été la boîte de Skinner.
He was designing a Skinner box, which is something like a big plate pan, but everything in it's controlled. The temperature's controlled, the light's controlled, and so on. And the idea is then you present children with certain stimuli that you want them to learn to react to.
Pendant près d'un an, Skinner isola sa fille dans une boîte semblable à celle construite pour des rats.
The child was stimulated and had to respond in a certain way, like a chicken or a rat in a cage, because they firmly believe that children are animals. If you believe, though, that a child is a human being, you can't train him like a rat.
Aujourd'hui, 40 millions de dollars provenant de la poche du contribuable sont versés chaque année par l'Institut de santé mentale pour la recherche du comportement en psychologie. Un total de 19 milliards depuis 1948. Avec ces fonds, les psychiatres utilisent les mêmes méthodes de conditionnement que Pavlov, Watson et Skinner. Exemple, une maison de correction où des enfants sont connectés à des batteries de 270 volts et soumis à des secousses électriques selon une procédure appelée thérapie par aversion.
Antoine was having a number of problems because he was up at a center that was shocking him every time he did anything. There was a button on a little, almost like a TV remote, that would be used and pushed.
They will get an additional shock for trying to remove the electrode. So they're expected to sit there and let this electricity pass through their skin without trying to remove it. If they yell in anticipation of the shock, they will shock the student an additional time for yell.
The cost to send a student to Judge Rottenberg from New York is about $214,000 per student. These students are tortured. They're given this electric shock therapy for no other reason but to inflict pain.
D'autres techniques comprennent le traitement par électrochoc pour perversion sexuelle, l'administration d'impulsions magnétiques dans le crâne pour interrompre l'activité du cerveau, ou encore l'implantation chirurgicale d'électrodes pour réprimer les troubles du comportement. Procédé coûtant jusqu'à 100 000 $ par patient. Alors que cette science sans âme, pourvoyeuse de techniques de modification du comportement, continue de générer des milliards pour la recherche et le traitement, elle a fourni les bases d'un mouvement psychiatrique responsable de millions de morts.
January 1945. As World War II comes to a close, the full horror of Hitler's final solution is exposed, with grotesque killing factories unparalleled in human history, mass graves filled with corpses of men, women and children, murdered by starvation, bullets and poison gas. What could drive men to commit such atrocities against their fellow human beings?
La réponse se trouve dans une pseudo-science appelée eugénisme, développée et encouragée par la psychiatrie quelques dizaines d'années avant les nazis.
The eugenics movement got started in 1883 with Francis Galton, and he felt that human beings should take evolution in their own hands, and that the most talented individuals, the most healthy individuals, the most attractive individuals should have more offspring.
There was great concern that people that they considered had poor genes were reproducing faster than the people they considered had good genes.
They felt that a medical solution might be the proper one. This is what led to the sterilization movement.
It resulted in sterilization of mentally ill people, sterilization of retarded people, sterilization of people we don't like politically and sociologically. So the problem is not with genetics. The problem is a pretend phony genetics used to justify inhumane social policies.
Au début du XXe siècle, bien que n'étant qu'une théorie sans preuve, l'eugénisme s'était répandu dans près de 30 pays, tels que l'Angleterre, le Brésil, le Mexique, la Suède, la Russie et surtout aux États-Unis, où la stérilisation forcée était alors très courante.
Eugenics movement in Germany was somewhat different than the eugenics movement in the United States in that there were many more physicians and psychiatrists. Alfred Ploetz was one of the pioneers in the German eugenics movement and how to control the population of those whom he considered inferior. In 1905, along with his brother-in-law, Ernst Ruden, he established the first organization for racial hygiene.
Alle Nationen haben sich mit einer außergewöhnlich großen Menge an minderwertigen, schwachen, kranken und Verkrüppelten abzugeben. Durch kluge Gesetze über Sterilisation würden wir auch in der Lage sein, den vernünftigsten Weg der Zeugung herbeizuführen.
Hitler était particulièrement impressionné par l'eugéniste américain Madison Grant. L'ouvrage de Grant, La disparition de la grande race, fut proclamé par Hitler comme sa Bible privée. Dans son livre Mein Kampf, Hitler saluait l'eugénisme comme la science qui rebâtirait la nation allemande.
Körperlich oder geistig gesund ist, dem ist es nicht erlaubt, seine Krankheit an seine Kinder weiterzugeben. Das Recht auf persönliche Freiheit wird durch seine Pflicht, die Rasse zu beschützen, eingeschränkt.
The German eugenicists welcomed the Nazi advent to power because the Nazi program could fund the very programs that they had in mind. The Nazis gave them political support, financial support, and conversely, the psychiatrists gave the Nazis a medical justification for their genocidal policies.
Something like 40% of German psychiatrists had joined the SS by 1933. They weren't forced into the SS, they just joined it naturally, because the beliefs were very, very similar.
Ruden and his work led directly to the decision to move from sterilization to murder.
Leur plan était simple. D'abord, convaincre le public que les faibles d'esprit voulaient se débarrasser du fardeau de leur existence, mais qu'ils n'arrivaient pas à l'exprimer. Et qu'en les tuant, on faisait preuve de compassion. Puis il s'agissait d'élargir la définition d'inférieur, pour y inclure les témoins de Jéhovah, juifs, gitans, homosexuels, nuls ne méritant de vivre. Les psychiatres propagèrent l'idée avec des films de massacres nazis, les projetant dans 5300 cinémas allemands.
Geisteskrankheit ist als ein Erbübel eine der größten Gefahren für die Volksgesundheit. Irrtum ist, dass sich solche Kranken glücklich fühlen und am Leben hängen. Sie haben überhaupt kein Daseinsbewusstsein. Wer von ihr befallen wird, dem ist die schwerste Last des Schicksals auferlegt. Ein Dasein ohne Leben.
It first started with passive violence, which is starvation. It then intensified to lethal injections, and finally it developed into systematic gassing and cremation.
Leurs quartiers généraux étaient établis à Berlin, sous le code infâme de T4.
T4 program was named after Tiergarten 4, which essentially resulted over a period of time in the murder of about 70,000 people who were deemed mentally retarded, emotionally distraught, or physically handicapped by the Germans. They were called life unworthy of living.
Les massacres furent testés dans des centres psychiatriques allemands, puis s'étendirent aux camps de concentration, avec pour bourreau l'élite des psychiatres allemands. Paul Nitsch, le directeur du T4, a déclaré:
Das Aussortieren in den Konzentrationslagern lief etwa genauso ab wie in den Nervenheilanstalten. Und mit selbigen Erfassungsbögen.
6 million Jews died in concentration camps and as a result of Nazi extermination policies. Rudin congratulated Hitler for making his, that is Rudin's, 30-year dream come true.
Après la capitulation des nazis, une cour de justice internationale fut créée afin de juger la psychiatrie pour ses crimes de guerre. Mais les psychiatres américains, craignant qu'un coup définitif ne soit porté au futur de la psychiatrie, sont intervenus, ne jetant le blâme que sur une poignée de psychiatres allemands.
There were some doctors who were prosecuted, but very few. Ernst Rudin returned to Switzerland at the end of the war. He did not serve any prison time.
One of the strangest things of all about the legacy of Nazi science is that some of the nastiest psychiatric eugenicists at the end of the war went back to work either in Germany or sometimes in the United States.
Le projet psychiatrique de départ pour éliminer des humains jugés indésirables s'est vu propager dans le monde civilisé. Responsable du massacre de 11 millions de personnes. Les psychiatres n'ont jamais été traduits en justice et ont continué à répandre le culte de l'eugénisme à travers le monde. De nos jours, nous en voyons les conséquences. Racisme, misère humaine et conflits sociaux interminables.
After World War II, a new eugenics was resurrected out of the bones and ashes of the old eugenics. The eugenics movement has been at the forefront to establish a new scientific racism that justifies oppression and exploitation and racism.
En fait, le racisme fait partie intégrante des origines de la psychiatrie.
The entire history of psychiatry, beginning with scientific conclusions that were made in the 1830s, was an effort to prove the intellectual inferiority of African Americans.
Benjamin Rush is the father of modern psychiatry. And he is the one that gave us the term nigritude. He said that all blacks have inherited this disease. And this particular disease, it caused them to be inferior. In addition to that, it was the reason why it was very important that blacks remain segregated and separate from whites so that whites did not inherit this disease.
Affirmant que la négritude était une forme de lèpre, Rush justifiait la ségrégation comme étant une nécessité médicale. Et cela devint l'argument pour maintenir l'esclavage.
The fact that you have brutalized a whole group of people had nothing to do with that. It had everything to do with some genetic link and that basically you were just a diseased person, so when a slave master wanted to get rid of a recalcitrant slave, they could just say, oh, well, they're suffering from this disease.
Drapetomania, that is the name of the mental disorder that was contrived by Samuel Cartwright, who said that blacks have a mental disorder if they had a desire to run away from slavery.
Running away became such a common problem that psychiatrists attempted to give that a disease. He says, but that's a cure for that. And the question was, well, what's the cure for that? Frequent whippings, frequent whippings. You'd be surprised how that disease clears up when the lash is put in place of their excuses.
Après l'abolition de l'esclavage, le racisme psychiatrique a continué et s'est intensifié. Le journal américain psychiatrique proclamait que les nègres, en tant que descendants de sauvages et de cannibales, n'étaient pas faits pour une civilisation plus avancée. C'est ainsi que leur pseudo-science, l'eugénisme, intensifia le racisme.
There is a clear and long and intimate connection between the eugenics movement and the Ku Klux Klan. Harry Laughlin, who was the Carnegie Institution's director of the Eugenics Record Office, had a close relationship to the Ku Klux Klan through the publication of a book called White America, which was written by a major Klan leader. So Laughlin wrote a glowing review of the book in the Eugenics News. And at the same time, you have the Ku Klux Klan using eugenics to justify their racist goals.
Mais le racisme psychiatrique n'existait pas qu'en Amérique. Certains des pires abus du XXe siècle se sont produits en Afrique du Sud. là où le gouvernement adopta les mêmes théories et méthodes racistes qu'Hitler. Ce n'était pas un hasard. Le Premier ministre avait étudié l'eugénisme dans ses études en Allemagne sous l'influence des nazis dans les années 20.
Dr. Henrik